Senator, it was your distraction.
Dana, granted amnesty
you were the one who started
level.
talking about eating dogs
at a
and
mass
cats.
level.
Hours before the assassination attempt on Donald Trump went down on Sunday, his running mate, J.D. Vance, was being massacred in the media.
If I have to, create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do, Dana.
The Republican candidate for vice president got dog-walked for fueling the lie about Haitian immigrants in Ohio eating dogs and cats. But do those Haitian constituents happen to have a valid defamation claim against Vance? Let's get into it. Welcome into TYT Overruled. I am your host, Adrienne Lawrence. First, it was Donald Trump embarrassingly peddling lies about Haitians in Springfield, Ohio. Now his chosen running mate, J.D. Vance, is hammering home that lie. Vance hit the major Sunday morning lineups to talk about the Haitian big lie.
We have direct firsthand accounts of, for example, migrants abducting geese at the local park and slaughtering them and eating them.
All the while, Vance refused to recant, apologize, or even display any sense of contrition. Even after learning the nexus between the lie and neo-Nazis, Vance held steadfast.
Local authorities now say there have been no credible reports of migrants hurting pets or animals. And in fact, neo-Nazis are now taking credit, frankly, for pushing these rumors mainstream. Why are you continuing to double and triple down on these baseless claims?
Well, two important points here, Kristen. First of all, I have heard firsthand from multiple constituents, people who made 911 calls a month ago, a year ago, who were making these complaints. I trust my constituents more than I do the American media that has shown no interest in what's happened in Springfield until we started sharing cat memes on the internet, which is disgraceful that the American media ignored this town.
As you can imagine, the far right is eating it up. Former Fox News host Carl Tuckerson included.
Trump said about people eating pets. And there were two levels on which to enjoy this. Well, the first one, I literally enjoyed it. People were like, I can't believe Donald Trump accused people of eating pets. I was like, I love him. It's just hilarious. Who would ever say that? They're eating all the pets. So great.
Carlson may be chuckling, but Vance's constituents in Springfield are suffering.
And they told us point blank, they fear for their lives. And we should note, a lot of them don't want to go on camera. We've had really one kind of representative of the community speak to us about that point. That's why you haven't seen a lot of people speaking out, because they are fearful. One family telling a local paper that they woke up one morning to a window broken and acid thrown on their car. So make no mistake about it. They are fearful. They say the violence is real. And a lot of them are afraid to speak out.
Now that we have a solid sense of how Vance has dug into this false narrative, is there the possibility of holding him accountable beyond the ballot box? One of the network's legal correspondents tweeted this. Breaking. J.D. Vance admits he knew the story of Haitian immigrants eating dogs and cats in Springfield, Ohio was completely false. The Haitian American community in Springfield now has a slam dunk legal case for defamation against Vance, and they should pursue it immediately. Defamation. That's the tort for redressing harm that a lie has done to one's reputation. Well, it's been a popular claim impacting Trump and anyone who he seems to cuddle up to. But as many would love to see the Haitians in Springfield successfully sue J.D. Vance for defamation, it's unlikely. And that's because of the identification requirement. Let's talk about it. For a statement to be considered defamatory, it must be about a particular person, not a large group of people. It's not necessary that a specific person be named, no, but there must be sufficient information from which people can determine who that statement's about. For instance, do you remember this kid, Nicholas Sandman? He's the Catholic schoolboy who sued various news outlets for defamation after they reported on a bunch of boys at the Capitol in red MAGA hats engaging in racist behaviors. Well, one of his lawsuits, the one particularly against the Washington Post, it was dismissed because the outlet never identified him. The identification element was missing. This is from the U.S. District Court judge's opinion dismissing his suit against the Washington Post. The first article does not mention Sandman by name. There is no identifiable description of him, and there's no picture of Sandman in the article. Like the statements about groups or classes, statements such as hat-wearing teens are clearly made against an aggregate body of persons, and thus an individual member not specifically imputed or designated cannot maintain an action. Sandman is not specifically mentioned in the article. Therefore, because the words used contain no reflection upon any particular individual, no averment can make them defamatory. In this particular situation, Vance has lied on Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, of which there are between 12,000 and 20,000, according to city officials. Because the Ohio senator has not identified any particular Haitian or provided sufficient information from which someone could be identified as an individual, the identification element isn't met to establish a defamation claim. And Vance likely knows this, as he is an attorney, and that's also probably why he's upping the ante now that his pet-eating lie has been debunked.
Thanks to her open border, there is a rise in HIV cases in Springfield, Ohio.
Just as there are no Haitians in Springfield, Ohio eating people's pets, there is no rise in communicable diseases caused by the Haitian population there. Let's just call this what it is: ridiculous racist lies orchestrated to distract individuals from the real conversations we should be having on taxing the rich, creating jobs, abortion rights, and other critical issues that are at stake in this election.
I know the mayor of Springfield, a Republican, told ABC News, "We've been punched in a way we should not have been punched." He said all these federal politicians that have negatively spun our city, they need to know they're hurting our city, and it was their words who did it.
This is disheartening. Vance is getting people hurt, and unfortunately, the people's only recourse really seems to be at the ballot box. Hopefully, those in Ohio can see that Vance is willing to say whatever he believes is necessary to get to the White House. And he really should not be a heartbeat away from holding down the Oval Office. What does it really say about a man who won't even stand up for his wife and kids on national television?
That Donald Trump has been traveling with Laura Loomer. She is someone who says she supports white nationalism. She spread conspiracy theories, including that the September 11th attacks are an inside job. She recently said that Kamala Harris, whose mother was Indian, if she wins in November, quote, "The White House will smell like curry." Senator, you are married to an Indian American woman. What was your reaction to hearing those comments specifically?
Well, Kristen, I want to go back to what you said about Haitian migrants to begin with, because I also don't think that this is actually an issue of national import. Is Laura Loomer running for president? No. Kamala Harris is running for president, and whether you're eating curry at your dinner table or fried chicken, things have gotten more expensive thanks to her policies. Let's talk about the person running for president of the United States, not a social media personality who supports Donald Trump.
Senator, were you and your wife offended, and do you disavow those comments that even some Trump allies say are blatantly racist?
Kristen, I just told you I don't like those comments, and I think that we ought to be focused on Kamala Harris's policy failures.
Do you think that Ohio will turn blue in November due to Vance's antics? You let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit those like and follow buttons, and thanks for watching.
Look, the president, I'm sure, will tell the American people how he's going to vote on it eventually, but he wasn't making an announcement last night.
So it was a grammar thing.
Sorry, could you repeat that, John?
It was a grammar thing. It was a speech thing. It was somehow some confusion in the words that he chose.
Uh-oh. At this point, J.D. Vance immediately regretted taking this interview.
Senator Vance, can you hear me?
Super staticky.
Senator Vance, I may be super staticky. You may not be hearing the loud baritone of my voice here.
What Trump's running mate didn't want to hear about was his latest self-inflicted wound about his stance on really anything, but this time it was abortion.
You overturned Roe, and you want abortion to be a states' rights issue. In Florida, the state that you are a resident of, there's an abortion-related amendment on the ballot to overturn the 6-week ban in Florida. How are you going to vote on that?
Well, I think the 6-week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?
I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. Look, just so you understand, everybody wanted Roe v. Wade terminated for years, 52 years. I got it done. They wanted it to go back to the states. Exceptions are very important for me, for Ronald Reagan, for others that have navigated this very, very interesting and difficult path.
About halfway through that answer, Trump realized that he stepped in it and accidentally went off the script that appeals to the total abortion ban crowd that he's been pandering to. And what does that mean when he said, I told him I want more weeks?
Well, I think the 6-week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So according to this bullshit logic, everyone wanted Roe overturned and given to the states to decide. So if the states are deciding, why would it matter to them that you told them, whoever they are, in every state that would completely ban it, that you want more weeks? It's no longer up to you, bro. The only thing worse was to send J.D. Vance on TV where he'd have to answer for Trump's damaging answers.
We were talking about Donald Trump's statement on abortion overnight where he said he would vote for more than 6 weeks in Florida. When the campaign then put out a statement saying, yeah, but he's not saying he's going to vote for the amendment which would allow for more than 6 weeks. And I was asking you if it was a language thing, if he understood what he was saying, or if this was a shift in position.
President Trump's been extremely consistent that he's going to make this decision as a citizen of Florida, but he wants the national government that he intends to lead to be focused on national issues like inflation, the cost of housing, and the wide open southern border. He wants states to make their own abortion policy.
He wants states to make those determinations, but he doesn't believe in the principles of the Republican Party that say terminating a 1-week-old pregnancy is murder. Does the Republican Party believe in common ground on murder? Since it's murder and God will punish you for even thinking that a pregnant person should have autonomy over their bodies and reproductive health, isn't Donald Trump going to hell? So this is who Jesus died for? This is the guy that God called his messenger? The guy to save God's favorite country? Man, this MAGA logic is getting confusing. Help us figure out this stance on IVF, James David.
How would this work if a state, and you believe that states should have the right to make these decisions, if a state bans IVF, but Donald Trump says he wants to guarantee and or pay for IVF for everyone who wants it, how would that work if a state banned it?
Well, John, I think it's such a ridiculous hypothetical because Alabama, which is maybe the most conservative state in the entire union, has actively protected fertility access and fertility treatments. There's no state in the union, whether a right-wing state or a left-wing state, that I think is trying to ban access to fertility treatments. And if Alabama is protecting this stuff, I think it's safe to say the whole country is as well.
Does Vance think people don't remember that when Alabama's top court banned IVF treatments to satisfy their total abortion ban mantra, it was only altered when the news went national and they had to defend it? They had no intention of reversing that decision. So his basis conclusion that there's no state that would ban it or that Alabama has actively protected fertility is completely false. So if you believe reality, you won't believe him. The worst part about this whole thing, though, is that JD himself voted against IVF.
Who is to say there's not another court in another state that could decide that IVF should be banned? It happened in Alabama for a minute. You also voted against a measure in the Senate that would have guaranteed access to IVF around the country. So it's possible, right?
Well, two things, John. First of all, yes, a court made that decision in Alabama, and like the next second, the Alabama state legislature fixed that problem and ensured women had access to these fertility treatments. And all that I voted on, John, is for religious liberty. I don't want Christian hospitals or Christian charities to be forced to do something that they don't want to do. We have multiple Republican measures that support fertility treatments, support IVF, but don't require Christian hospitals or other religious organizations to violate their conscience. I think all of us accept that we live in a big country with diversity of opinions. We want women to have access to this needed medical treatment. We also want to make sure that Christian organizations can live their conscience. I don't think there's any tension there or any conflict. And fundamentally, it's Democrats who are trying to force people to do things against their will.
He said, we live in a big country with diversity of opinions where we should allow Christian organizations to deny medical care and treatments to people if their conscience tells them to. You know, this kind of response ignores the fact that the smaller the state and the smaller the town, there are fewer organizations available for people to shop around for one that isn't forcing their beliefs on patients. At this point in the interview, Vance was probably thinking that his boss lied to him when he declared this little insignificant issue is over.
I think the abortion issue has been taken down many notches. I don't think it's a big factor anymore, really. But that issue is very much subdued. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, that flippant energy says a lot about Trump's view that as long as he wants an issue to be put to bed, that it's done, which completely disregards the vast number of affected Americans that aren't convinced. JD believed it and was raked over the coals when he had to answer all those questions that he didn't want to about how it isn't as subdued as Trump promised. But CNN's John Berman wasn't done with JD.
You were talking about Donald Trump's social media. Would you describe his posts over the last 48 hours as lifting people up, quoting, reposting QAnon statements, reposting these misogynistic memes about Vice President Harris and Hillary Clinton? That's the kind of open discussion that you think is lifting people up?
Oh, John, I think if you look at Donald Trump's full campaign appearances and, yes, his social media appearances, what you see is two things. A guy with an agenda to lower prices and bring back American prosperity, and a political candidate who isn't stodgy, who likes to have some fun and likes to tell some jokes.
See, this is why MAGA conservatives think that the media is unfair to Trump and really anyone that parrots the inconsistent things that they do and say. Trump's barrage of misogynistic and bigoted posts is just fun and games. JD doesn't like the politics of boring scolds that tell people that they can't laugh.
I do think that's how you lift people up. A politics of boring scolds telling people they can't laugh, that is not lifting Americans up. That's how to tear us down.
What happened to her laugh? I haven't heard that laugh in about a week. That's why they keep her off the stage. That's why she's disappeared. That's the laugh of a crazy person, I will tell you, if you haven't known it. It's a crazy. She's crazy. They told her, don't laugh, don't laugh. No, her laugh is career threatening. They said, don't laugh. She hasn't laughed. She doesn't laugh anymore. It's smart, but someday it's going to come out. That's the laugh of a person with some big problems. She's trying to come back. She got rid of the laugh. I noticed I haven't seen that crazy laugh that she got. She's crazy. That laugh, that's the laugh of a crazy person. But I noticed that she's not using that laugh anymore. Somebody convinced her, don't laugh, just don't laugh. Don't laugh under any circumstances because
I like laughter, but sometimes.
Not her laughter. From the moment we take back the White House from crooked Joe Biden and Kamala, I call her Laughing Kamala. You ever watch her laugh? She's crazy. You know, you can tell a lot by a laugh. No, she's crazy. She's nuts. Have you heard her laugh? That is the laugh of a crazy person. That is the laugh of a crazy. It's the laugh of a lunatic. Have you heard it? They prohibited her for laughing. I've been waiting for her to laugh because as soon as she laughs, the election's over.
You know, this Republican ticket needs to have some meetings on consistency. Do they not realize that Trump formulated his entire campaign against Kamala Harris based on her laugh? They've trapped themselves in this corner because they originally thought being an asshole that mocks and tells fifth grade level jokes about their opponent would seal the election. But now that many aren't responding well to the endless negativity, JD hopes to call the latest tantrum session fun and jokes.
Hello everyone, I'm David Schuster. As we approach the 2024 election, the spotlight on the two main candidates is growing more intense. No matter where you look online, you'll find strong opinions, both good and bad. But is there a double standard when it comes to how Kamala Harris is treated compared to Donald Trump? According to Peter Baker from the New York Times, there just might be.
Yeah, it's really striking when they say that she's not willing to take questions, and they take questions and say, well, you're not allowed to fact check me. You know, I'm allowed to say anything I want, no matter how true it is or not true, and you're not allowed to point out any contrary information or facts. You're right about that. I mean, I think that he is mainly stuck to friendly interviews, of course, himself. Conservative media, friendly media, not just friendly media, people who are openly on his side, who are participating in the campaign in some way or another.
So Donald Trump is talking to people helping his campaign and to friendly media. And let's be clear, this is a very cautious approach. Donald Trump has refused to participate in any additional debates, perhaps to avoid the self-inflicted damage that Trump might cause. He also recently canceled a primetime interview with 60 Minutes, citing various reasons, including complaints about fact-checking and demanding an apology for his 2020 interview. But even with this more conservative media strategy, Donald Trump has not held back from spreading outright falsehoods on the campaign trail, something we've become all too familiar with since his rise in U.S. politics.
But you're right to say that he, is called out on telling things that are not true, that are lies, that are false information, and doesn't seem to actually be moving the needle. We did a fact check on him a couple weeks back where we looked at a typical Trump rally. And we looked at a typical Harris rally. And we said, okay, what are the statements that were made in these two rallies could be called false or misleading? And his number was something like 63 in a single rally, and hers was like 6, so 10 times as much. So obviously you don't want to call it false equivalence. It's not that she doesn't say things, as any politician does, that aren't true or that are misleading, but the proportion here is obviously very striking. And it is, I think, something we see more and more. We could talk about the story about his age if you want, but I mean, clearly if you go back and watch his videos and you do any kind of analysis of how things have changed over the years, he is increasingly apparently willing to say things that are not just untrue, but are so detached from reality, like the cats and dogs being eaten, and yet it doesn't seem to be rebounding against him.
Indeed, if you look at polling, the frequency of Trump's lies is not rebounding against him. This brings us to a glaring double standard that Kamala Harris and the Democrats continually face. While Donald Trump can lie or make outrageous statements with little impact on his support, Harris and her party are held to a much higher standard. Whether it's about climate change, where Republicans can ignore or deny the science, while Democrats are pressured to deliver flawless, detailed plans, or broader issues like safeguarding democracy itself. Democrats face scrutiny Republicans rarely encounter. The Republican Party, especially under Donald Trump, seems to have a much lower bar to clear, even as Democrats fight to preserve democratic norms and tackle global challenges. The Democrats are expected to navigate these issues perfectly, while Republicans can undermine those same norms and still keep voter support. And the imbalance is deeper than public perception. The Electoral College gives Republicans a real advantage, allowing them to win the presidency even if they lose the popular vote, something we've seen repeatedly. One of the most striking aspects of the current political landscape is how the GOP has effectively decided to pretend that the January 6th insurrection never happened. This was not just a moment in history, it was an unprecedented attack on the very heart of our democracy. Yet for many Republican leaders, it's as if that day has been erased from the national narrative. Instead of acknowledging the violence and chaos that erupted as rioters stormed the Capitol seeking to overturn the results of a free and fair election, many in the GOP have chosen to downplay or even justify the events of that day. Some Republicans refer to the rioters as tourists, attempting to paint a picture of innocence that starkly contrasts with the reality of the violent mob that sought to disrupt the certification of electoral votes. This denial is not just a matter of historical revisionism, it has real consequences by dismissing the severity of January 6th. The GOP is sending a message that they are willing to tolerate violence in pursuit of political goals. They've opted for a narrative that casts the insurrection in a sympathetic light, while those who defended democracy, like Mike Pence, are often painted as the villains. It's a blatant attempt to rewrite the story to fit their political agenda, prioritizing party loyalty over accountability.
We're back with breaking news in the January 6th investigation up on Capitol Hill. Phil Waldron has been subpoenaed by the Select Committee. He is that retired U.S. Army colonel connected to the 38-page PowerPoint that contained a blueprint for overturning the 2020 election, the one that was sent to Mark Meadows, that Mark Meadows later turned over to the January 6th committee. In a letter announcing the subpoena, committee chairman Benny Thompson writes this, quote, Mr. Waldron reportedly played a role in promoting claims of election fraud and circulating potential strategies for challenging the results of the 2020 election. He was also apparently in communication with officials in the Trump White House and in Congress, discussing his theories in the weeks leading up to the January 6th attack. The document he reportedly provided to administration officials and members of Congress is an alarming blueprint for overturning a nationwide election.
This approach also emboldens further extremism within the Republican Party. By refusing to confront the actions of those involved in the insurrection, the GOP is creating a dangerous precedent, suggesting that violence can be a valid political tool. Meanwhile, those who stand firmly against this ideology, who insist on the importance of upholding democratic norms and the rule of law, these people are often marginalized from the Republican Party or dismissed. Now, as we head into the 2024 election, this refusal to acknowledge January 6 poses a critical and crucial question. What does it say about a Republican Party that chooses to ignore a direct assault on democracy? And what are the implications for our political future if this denial continues to be the party line? The stakes are incredibly high, and the willingness of the GOP to pretend this insurrection never happened could very well shape the trajectory of our democracy for years to come. And this year, the seeds of an insurrection to block democracy are already being planted. Over the past few weeks, Republicans have been promoting polls and claims that Donald Trump has gained ground and is now leading Kamala Harris in every battleground state. All of these polls have been done by new polling organizations and groups with ties to Donald Trump. In other words, they are biased in favor of Donald Trump. And experts say the polling methodology in these numbers is flawed. It is skewed. The polling samples are not statistically significant. The data is unreliable. But MAGA world and its conservative media cheerleaders are conditioning the American people to think that Donald Trump is going to win the election, perhaps by an electoral college landslide. And when that doesn't happen, these same MAGA folks are going to say, well, the election must have been fraudulent. After all, the polls had Donald Trump winning. The Democrats must have cheated, they will say. Donald Trump is going to say it, And his supporters are going to echo that if he loses. Because once again, Democrats are going to face a double standard. Even though the election is the only poll that matters, and the only one that actually includes everybody who votes, Republicans are going to claim that if Kamala Harris wins, it's the election that should be thrown out, not the unscientific and flawed polls Republicans conducted and published in the final stretch. Because in MAGA world, anything contradicting Donald Trump is wrong. Anything supporting Trump, even Fantasyland polls, must be right. It's a simple equation. Reality is for Democrats, lies are for Donald Trump Republicans. They say Kamala Harris is hiding and Donald Trump is talking to the media. No. January 6th was a peaceful protest, they say. No. Kamala Harris lies as much as Donald Trump, they insist. Nope. The pre-election polls, no matter how unscientific, are more accurate than Election Day. No. This is where we are, America. Thankfully, our election system and the courts are built for facts and evidence. We saw that in 2020, and we will see it again in 2024. The question is, how much damage will our nation have to endure to get to the truth and have both major political parties accept it? These are challenging times, I know, but it's also a time when we can show we are a nation and a democracy that will persevere. I'm David Schuster. Thanks for joining us.